We're on page 220. Yes, we're on page 221 in the Maamar Matza that the previous Rebbe said or had written for 1944 in the middle of the Holocaust. And here is a Hasidic Rebbe who went through the Holocaust, who went through Stalin, and he has the wherewithal, even though his health was not well at all, and to give over such a Maamar. And in the point we're at now, where the Rebbe is brought a Lashon HaZoyar, a Targum Yonason, The Pasuk in Tehillim says, Hashemayim Mesaprim Kavod Heil. The heavens will tell a story. What story will they be Mesaper? Kavod Keil, the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we have the Targum Yonason that he brings on 221 in the middle of the page. Quote, the Mistaklin Bishmaya, gazing on the heaven, Mishtoyin Yikora de Hashem. Mishtoyin little means playing with. Yikora de Hashem, the dearness, the Yokar, the preciousness of God. Now obviously the Targum Yonason isn't just giving us a literal translation, but the Targum Yonason is hinting to a deeper idea, as the Rebbe explains in the Maamar, Upeirush de Mistaklin Bishmaya, the idea that to gaze into heaven, he says, Hu al derech, it's similar to the idea of Su Marim Einechem, lift your eyes to heaven, Uru'u, and see Mi Bar Eila, who created everything in front of one's eyes. Quoting the Mashal, Agiba Shenichnas Lebedina, I like the Mashal, a mighty fellow, very strong, a bodybuilder goes into a country, and no one knows who he is. So it took some shrewd fellow, a pikeach, and he says, Min avna dahu misgoishes ba. Yoidim gvurasei. We pay attention to the stones, the rocks that he touches and he plays with and he handles. And from that, you know that this guy is really, really strong. I just wrote, just the other day, I reminded myself, when I was a boy, when I was a teenager, 13, 14, 15 years old, my place at the Rebbe's Fabrengens was behind the Rebbe. You see, we all had places, and before you became a regular, you had to be there on time to show that you're really committed to this. So you came before the Fabrengen an hour, half an hour, and you got your place, and you stood fast, and you didn't let anyone shove you to the right or the left. This is your place, because there was a guy next to you at his place, and a guy before and after you, and you were all surrounded by guys that has their places. So as a boy, I wanted to hear the Rebbe, not just see him. So I got myself a place behind his back, although I couldn't see his face unless he turned around, which was only during the intervals when they said L'chaim and sang Nigunim. But I compromised that it was worth for me to hear better what he's saying than to see him, because I couldn't do both, because I was a young boy, a young teenager. Who am I after all? Well, lo and behold, at the larger Fabrengens, this is 1974-75 I'm talking about. At the larger Fabrengens, the shul, the Fabrengen took more of the shul, right? Shabbos, the Fabrengen was still relatively smaller. But during the weekdays, people were able to drive from other parts of New York, etc. So the Fabrengens were larger. One of the guests that came for the larger Fabrengens was Meir Abasera. And Meir Abasera, I didn't know who Meir Abasera is. But all I saw that standing a person or two near me on the bench behind the Rebbe was a man with a large hat, with a nice face, with a nice beard. And I noticed that the Rebbe, from time to time, Yud Beis Tammuz, Yud Shvat, Purim, would turn around and go like this to him, to whistle during the Nigunim. And he became known in Lubavitch, in Chabad, the Rebbe's whistler. He had a yechidus with the Rebbe in 1971. He was
I didn't understand. He whistled.
The Rebbe showed him to go like this. The Rebbe didn't whistle. Okay. The Rebbe did not whistle. Yeah. But he showed him, Mayor, you lead us in whistling.
Okay, you be okay.
And Mayor started to whistle, and the whole crowd, whoever knew how to whistle, whistled, and there was nigunim, and the simcha was beyond words. And this wasn't an every Farbrengen occurrence, you know. I would say it was several times a year when and the Rebbe explained once what justified whistling, because whistling is not a Yiddish azach, it's not a Jewish thing. But he brought what it says in Tanakh, that when David HaMelech returned the Aron from the Plishtim, right there in Bet Shemesh, in the valley over there, right? It says in Tanakh, David David whistled. So the Rebbe said, well, David's allowed to whistle. And we're not. The answer is, David whistled because the simcha was so great. So the Rebbe said that at a time when we're battling a Yetzer Hara, and there's some idea of simcha that will shatter the Yetzer Hara, it's appropriate to whistle. Now, only a Rebbe can say that and feel that. You know, we don't know the difference. So whenever the Rebbe instructed to whistle, it was done. And who was the one who he usually told to whistle? If he was at the Farbrengen, Meir Abasera. I even remember there were times the Rebbe turned around and he wanted to tell Meir to start whistling, and he wasn't at the Farbrengen. He didn't come to every Farbrengen. So I reminded myself, that's just a background to what I wanted to tell you. I reminded myself that Meir had these large hands, like twice the size of my hand. And when he would potch, because usually it wasn't whistling, it was clapping. When he would potch with his hands, I relate to what it says here in the Medrash. Avna de Miskashis L'bo. The hands, here it says the hands that take the stone. You know, you could see from the might of his hands how he dealt with a stone. That's what it says over here. So it reminded me of Meir Abasera's large hands standing next to this young little shrimpy teenager who's like, you know, and Meir is banging away with his large hands. That's all I wanted to say. Let's go back to the Maamar. So, what's the point? What's the point of the Medrash? The point is, Hashamayim misaprim kvoiteil. If you understand, if you gaze at the heavens, then you can really be misaper kvoit keil. If you just look at the heavens, say, God created the heavens. Oh yeah, you won't have the misaper. Which, by the way, we're coming up to Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. You want to get your people and your children and grandchildren excited? You need to be misaper. Not only stories, you need to really be in the story, in the Sipur. If they see that you're living with the Sipur, they're going to live with the Sipur. If you're just repeating and you're tired and you're half on the couch, believe me, it ain't going to be much of a Sipur. They're going to say, go to sleep, tired old man. Okay, so let's continue. V'yuvin, we're holding here V'yuvin. V'yuvin b'yoymik yoynison, do you have the place? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines from the bottom and middle of the page. V'yuvin.
I have the place, thank you.
Good. V'yuvin b'yoymik yoyser inyan masha oime b'targim yoynison. We'll understand deeper what the Targum Yoynison says. Shayidei hayistaklus bashomayim, by gazing at the heaven, misaprim yikora de malka, we relate the preciousness of the king. Shahainu shahashomayim utzvah hashomayim. This means from the heavens and the hosts of the heavens. Onu yoidim, we know, as Pchinas Oid Ein Sof, we can relate to the infinity of Hashem, Habilti Bagvul, that's beyond limitations, Shalamaylam and Pchinas Oilam, is that transcends all created worlds. This is what we can have an understanding of, the infinity of God, the transcendence of God. This is the meaning of the verse. Lift your eyes to heaven, and see mi bara eile, who created all that's before you. Hamoitzi b'mispar tzavoim ish loy nedar. Hamoitzi b'mispar tzavoim, who gives out, b'mispar tzavoim, the numbers of hosts. Ish loy nedar, there is no lack of ish, of man. In other words, species. Any and all species come from God. V'hainu, mashelo yesh shinui v'hefsik bashpo, the fact that there is no change and no hefsek, no interruption in the influence of Hashem to humanity and to all creation. From this we observe and realize that who is the one that sustains them, Moshe? It is a force of God that's infinite. Why? What's the logic? Pashut. If the force of Hashem is limited, Shmuel, then you can't say Ish Loy Nedar. There's going to be an end to the species. Just as the argument goes now with global warming. There will be a time when there'll be an end. And the answer is, what's the answer? Even if we accept the scientific argument, the answer is that's the perception of Teva, of Gvul. So from that perception, maybe there will be a cessation. But since HaKadosh Baruch Hu is transcendent, so even though in Teva, in nature, it looks there'll be a cessation, God, who's transcendent, says, Loy Nedar, it will never stop. The species will continue. The sun will be eternal. Hashem made a sun and moon and kechavim and all the constellations, everything. It's an eternity of emes. And they'll never cease to be. Because Hashem is the force behind it. That's what he says here. Mizeh nireh asher koyach bilti bal gvul. From the fact that they're loy nedar, they never cease to be, this proves that the force that animates them is infinite, manik u'mechayoisem, who leads them and enlivens them. Ki mitzad, and look what he says. Ki mitzad chayis atzmo yishem belubish boi. If you were only to look at the vitality and energy that's invested in them, kevin shehu mugbal, since that itself is limited, shebeguf mugbal, within a body, the entity of a body is mugbal, is limited. It's impossible for there to be a force sheboy within it that's built in, next page 222, built in mugbal, that's infinite. How can Moshe, a finite being and guf, receive an energy that's limitless, infinity, Moshe? Can't be. Kiyim. Rather, behechrech. You must say, Shahachayis gamkein mugbal, that the chayis itself that's animating, we're talking now about the chayis, the force that's animating, the force itself is a limited koyach. We call this, Yonis and Chassidus, what? The koyach hagvul, the power of gvul within God. And the Rebbe says, Hoyanechlesh u'mishtana. If this were to be the case, then the guf, the limited guf, if the energy is only one that's limited, it would become nechlash, weaker, umishtana, and and change. That also means that there would be some interruption in the flow. And the fact is, the sun comes out every day and the moon comes out. And it don't look like they're tired. And it doesn't look like they have an interruption from doing what Hashem wants. Sharikulam kayomin kibamin. They all exist in species. Always. What do we mean to say? Even by creatures of below on earth. Shehem nifsodim, you could say certain species are extinct, right? Right? Mikomakam, nevertheless, loy nifsad min echad legamri. So you could say that certain chveis, a hippopotamus or buffaloes, fish, certain ones are extinct. You can't. Says the Rebbe, it's true about the particular kind, but the overall species, the overall family always exists. So yes, let's say the Chilazon Shmuel, right? Right, we don't know. I know Rabbi Tursky Shalom and others today accept they do know because they found the blue, but the way it was and the way most, I think, Yidden believe is that we don't know the Chilazon. No, but the Chilazon was a fish. What happened to this fish? And the answer is that the argument is that this fish is extinct. No? So are you going to say that fish are extinct? No. Even if we accept that, this particular brand is extinct. But the overall species exists. That's what he says. Lo nifsid min echod legamri. You cannot say that there's any species that's completely been nifsad, lost, and forgotten, and extinct. Variu efshori hahefsit. It's only that it lends itself to the possibility of loss. And why aren't they? He's asking on himself, the Rebbe, like on what he's saying. Why? Why must we say that only the particular brand is lost, but not the overall species? And specifically, if you look at what the Rambam says, the Rambam writes that whatever is possible as bemin in species, it's impossible that it will not come. So Shmuel, is he using the Rambam as a question or as an answer? Shmuel?
This is an answer, no?
No. I know it sounds like an answer. No, I think it's part of the question. In other words, the Rambam is saying whatever is efshariyut, possibility, a possibility also means that it could come, it also means it cannot come. So he says, the Rebbe is saying, because the Rambam in that particular halacha and is talking about the limited energy of Hashem. And from that perspective, yes, there could be a cessation completely. Look at the next line. The reason, or maybe you're right, maybe the Rambam says that, and the Rebbe is asking on the Rambam, and his answer is, you know why the Rambam says that? Because the Rambam is referring to not the limited force, but the infinite force, habilti bal gvul, that's limitless, and that's why there never will be a cessation of the min, of the species. The Rebbe says, and we can understand this even better from the heaven and the heavenly hosts. And let's see what he says. The heavens and all these constellations. The heavenly hosts. They're like they were created. They are today the way they were created on the first day of creation, on the day of creation. The Yerushalmi says, these are the offspring of the heavens and the earth. B'yoyim hiborim, on the day they were created. Sheim chazokim kiyoyim hiborim. They are as mighty, Hillel. They're as forceful and strong today as they were when Hashem created them during the 6 days of creation. How could you say that? They are, after all, creatures that are limited and murkav. Murkav is a different idea. Listen, Chevra. Murkav means it's comprised. Harkava. When you bring two things together, it's comprised, right? So he says, the nivroyim mikbolim. The constellations and everything else are limited. It's the sun, it's the moon. The sun is not the moon. Umurkovim mikuf nefesh. They're comprised of two things: a soul and a body. Meaning there's a force that makes them tick and do its job, and then there's the actual fireball. There's the actual moon. That's what we call a goof. It's not a goof like ours, right? But it's a goof, it's an entity. So since they have a goof and a nefesh, ve'ef shir ha'efsid. Seemingly, they would be in the category that it's possible for them to cease to be. Because we know that when a person's soul leaves their body, we know there's an end, there's a cessation to the body, finished. Says the verse that we quoted on the other side at the bottom of 221, Ish mehem lo nedar. There is no lacking. Nedar, Hilla, you asked the other day, means to lacking, missing. Lo nedar. Why? Belishum shinu vehefsek klal. 1 second, not before the why. Without any change and interruption whatsoever. So the question is, how could that be? The answer is because there is a koyach of Ein Sof, of infinity, that sustains them and makes them be. So that's why I go back and say there's no contradiction between saying that from the perspective of nature, or what we call chassidus, the koyach hagvul, they would cease to be, and simultaneously they won't cease to be because there's the koyach habilti gvul that wants them to be. Before we continue, do you have any questions on this? Is it clear? Yes, Hillel.
So we're talking about it like one might say, because the physical phenomena would be, in scientific terms, subject to entropy.
Yes.
Yes, what do they call this? The second law of thermodynamics, that all things are subject to entropy. So some kind of degradation.
That's right. But the koyach habilti bal gvul is that's not part of that equation, and that's what the Rambam means. Ish, and the pasuk means ish loy nedar. Moshe, are you with us, or you're a little famished?
I'm more on the famished side.
What are you famished about? Come on, voice your famishkeit. Have you ever learned about this in the Rambam, or in? Have you ever heard shiurim about this when you were in yeshiva? Anything at all about this concept?
Oh, not on this topic. No. Not on this. I'm not really.
But do you understand Shmuel wants, maybe Shmuel has some words to clarify. Yes, Shmuel.
Put down, I think in Hayom Yom, also the Baal Shem Tov, he mentioned in every part of existence, every item of existence, there's a physicality, and there's also a godly energy that keeps it in existence. So they both are true, but the physicality is what might be, temporary, but the godly existence that's there giving it existence is permanent.
Yes, but Shmuel, what the Rambam says and what the Frierdiker Rebbe brings here, the Pesach says that even the physicality of the species will always exist. The moon and the sun will always exist because the Eibishter created them. It's not just the Ruchni Shebehem. The Ruchni Shebehem is why they will physically exist.
If that's the case,
in the Gashmias, that there's a non-ceasing in the Gashmias as well?
Absolutely. Ish Lo Neder doesn't mean that the actual physical sun will cease to be, or the moon. No. So in other words, you could tell me, what you could say is that the particular brand of fish or animal within the species, that won't exist. That can end. But the overall species will exist. So I don't know, but let's say the sun does 3-4 different things. You could technically argue, I'm just thinking out loud, that one of the three might cease to be, but not the sun ball. The sun ball will always remain. Yes, Yonason.
Well, they talk about different suns, different sizes of sun. There's war, and there's full size, and eventually they die out, But it takes a few million years. But they did check sun that collapse upon themselves, and they make black holes and all this stuff. So you can say that maybe sun do destroy themselves, but the overall category of suns will always be there. There will always be a body of fire in heaven, no matter where you are.
Okay, so Bepoyo, I see sun outside now, and I'm sure you do too. Are we always going to have sun?
Yeah, because the sun will be going for a few million years. It's got a life force.
So 1 second. So technically, if I was alive at the end of those few million years, I would not see sun? Is that what you're saying?
Technically, yes, because there have been suns that have collapsed upon themselves and produced.
I don't think that's the pshat in the Pesach. I don't think that's a Torah view according to what it says here. Ish Lo Neder. Ish Lo Neder.
Yeah, but then how did the black hole come about?
I don't know. I'm not a scientist, and there's books that written by the Orthodox scientists how to reconcile this and that. So I can't speak for the reconciliation. Yes, Shmuel.
Maybe you could say that the fact that the sun will not extinguish for several million years is as good as infinity. It'll be just as good as infinity.
What's the logic, Shmuel, to that? It's a few million years. It's still gvul. It's still it's still Hagbola.
Yeah, but way before then, Mashiach will be here, so it'll be.
Amen. But that's that. It's a nice thought, but it's not seichel. I don't see the argument. The logical. If it's a few million years, it's gvul. Anyway. I think I don't know. I like the previous Rebbe's, and not only his answer, but it says in Chassidus, this idea. This is in his Chiddush, that from the perspective of the Gvul of Hashem, it's limited, but from the perspective of the Bli Gvul, that force of Hashem, which ultimately is the force that created and creates the sun and the moon, it'll always be. I don't know. I think that's see this way of reconciling it, if I understand it correctly. So Moshe, what is it that you're not following? Like what are you lost with?
I think that I'm not really, I in the previous page when we have the pasuk about Hashemayim Misaprim Kavod Kel. So you mentioned about person gazing right? The lashon is gazing.
Yeah, he's stockless.
Right, which is a couple lines up. Now, I think from there, I lost the connection to what we're speaking about now.
Oh, that's a good question. And the answer is, he says that if you don't gaze, which means if you just look at the situation from the outside, we have a problem. The world, the moon, the sun and the moon and everything will end. It should end. Because the force that gives it vitality is a limited one. So when the force ends, the result of the force ends. You hear that? So there.
Yeah, but how could we?
Go ahead.
Okay, but how can we say that the force, if the moon, the sun, if the sun receives its vitality, I say dafka the sun because the sun of you, I guess, just think of the sun as a more sort of an active entity, as opposed to the moon.
Okay.
Just feels more static.
Okay.
But if we know that Kodesh Baruch Hu obviously is being providing every entity with its koach to continue to operate. For example, the sun. So why would it?
You say we know because we live in a world where we look up every day and we see a sun and a moon. But what do you say?
I'm thinking just more the lines that we know that obviously a goof is going to live until
a goof ends. A goof ends.
The goof ends.
No,
we know the goof ends.
So why won't the sun? Okay. Why won't the sun end? It's a goof.
So that's a good question.
And meaning that's what we're addressing here, and that's what we're addressing. And what do we? That's what the pasuk says. And the pasuk says, "Ish lo nedar." The Rebbe says the species won't end. In other words, one second, Shmuel. The fact that a person passes on, does that mean that humanity dies? No. That's it.
No, just
so the same way. There can be a detail within the sun and the moon and the constellations that ends. It's not an end to the overall species. And why is that? So the Rebbe adds, and that's what he means, listakel. Understand. This is the answer to your question. What's the connection between this and before? Gaze and realize that we're talking about the koyach ha'ein sof, the infinity of God that makes it still be. If it wasn't the infinity of God, there would be an end, just like there's an end to the body. But because just as the body is associated with atzmus, essence, and so too the constellations and the heavens there and all the things, the hosts are connected to the Ein Sof. So if God is infinite, Ein Sof, his results are Ein Sof as well. Ish lo nedar. Anyway, what I suggest, Moshe, we have a few minutes, take out the Rambam with an English translation, see what the Rambam says for yourself. Take out the pasuk, the verse, there's a reference, look it up, and see what the commentaries say. And this way you'll maybe become a little more comfortable with that whole discussion. Okay. Shmuel, you wanted to say something? We're sorry. No.
What you said before about mankind always existing, but even beyond that, when you talk about this status, what does it mean? It means don't take it for granted. The precision and all the complexity of physicality, how it all fits together, how the sun is exactly where it is and not closer or further away. It shows an infinite intelligence. It's amazing.
Right.
And they said, take it for granted.
Yeah.
Take it for granted.
Yeah. Okay, Chavra, we'll continue tomorrow. I felt we needed to dialogue this and talk it out. Just to rush to say words, this is important to go back and forth. Hillel, yes. Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I think that this whole subject is really sort of fascinating for just a discussion all of its own, because it really buttresses sort of a place where the Torah and scientific method really, scientific understanding really can converge and can dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, but it's. I know that when I was in yeshiva, it was always, if we had a real scientist who was from, who could talk about this and explain, it was fascinating because,
yeah,
just like Moshe is, saying like he's not aware of the Torah, he never learned it, when we also really never learned it, this is, we're amateurs. I'm an amateur, you need to really be seasoned. And there are select people. I mean, the Rebbe, part of his genius was that he knew science and he was able to dialogue. And frankly, not everyone agreed with his answers. I once spoke to Dr. Abraham Ben Abraham, who I hope he's still alive in Eretz Yisrael. I met him and I spoke to him, and then there's the one from Bar Ilan, a very nice professor, PhD, I forget his name now, spoke to him too. They said they respected the Rebbe, but they disagreed with some of his conclusions and approaches. So I'm just saying that, it lends itself for a wide discussion, like you were saying, Hillel, but you really need...
Did you ever have...
Go ahead, what?
Did you ever have a chance to follow up? I told you that story of the Rebbe and this scientist that my friend Andy Goldfinger told me.
I did. I mean,
Goldfinger is
I think I reached out to him, or he reached out to me. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, you did. Okay, great. Because he's one of those people who's able, in the subjects that he's familiar with, particularly quantum physics, and he works for NASA Jet Propulsion Lab.
Oh,
and
his name is Andy Goldfinger. Andy Goldfinger.
Yeah.
And he's out in Baltimore. He's in Baltimore, right?
Right. Yeah, he's in Baltimore. Yeah.
Okay, believe that we have to follow up. Maybe one day he can give us a lecture. Zaygesund, everyone. Have a great day. See everyone tomorrow. Bye bye.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.